Welcome, everybody, to our Thursday special. Today is Mehera's birthday, so which Baba had said to celebrate along with Christmas with all his heart. And let's just send all our thoughts, prayers, and love to Mehra, who was Baba's favorite beloved, and he had specially asked all of us to love her as much as we love him. And Mehra was such a crucial part in Baba's journey, and she was like Baba's Radha to Krishna. And in fact, there are some photographs and paintings of Baba as Krishna and Mehra as Radha. Their love was very special, it was unconditional, and a very different bond that they had. However, we are on page 1417 of Lord Meher's online edition, and we shall start reading today. We'll take turns and hope that you'll enjoy the reading, whether you're on Zoom or listen to it later. Eva, please take over.
Yes. Okay. Page 1417. The West learns to sing. 1932. Evolution, or the fall into matter, made the creation of such a separate self necessary. Otherwise, spiritual consciousness could never be attained in the flesh. In the beginning, before evolution began, we were united with the source of all. But unconsciously, as the fish lives in the sea without being aware of the sea because it has never left it, evolution involved a separation from the source of all with a consequent conscious longing to return to it through a succession of lives and forms. The conscious return to the source during physical incarnation only became possible when consciousness became equilibrated, reached an equilibrium or equipoise in gross matter. America represents the vanguard and synthesis of the white races, and hence forms the best foundation for the spiritual upheaval I will bring about in the near future. America has tremendous energy, but most of this energy is misdirected. I intend to divert it into spiritual and creative channels. I am going now to California for a few days. From there, I must go to the Far East for one day for spiritual reasons, but I will be back in California at the end of June, and I will speak on June 29. But if I should be delayed, I will return on July 12 and speak on July 13. When I speak, there will be many proofs of my spiritual power and of my ability to bestow illumination. People will then realize that truth, which is the source of all love and existence, rules supreme in all departments of life. My work and aims are intensely practical. It is not practical to overemphasize the material at the cost of the spiritual. It is not practical to have spiritual ideals without putting them into practice. To realize the ideal in daily life, to give beautiful and adequate form to the living spirit, to make brotherhood a fact, not merely a theory as at present, This is being practical in the true sense of the word. My work will arouse great enthusiasm and a certain amount of opposition. This is inevitable, but spiritual work is strengthened by opposition, and so it will be with mine. It is like shooting an arrow from a bow. The more you pull the bowstring towards you, the swifter the arrow speeds to its goal. As people were standing in line to pay their respects to Baba, he suddenly stopped the program and called one of the mandali. Baba pointed to a woman standing in the back of the crowd and instructed that she be brought to the front to meet him. Baba's summons was delivered by Narina and received by the woman in an embarrassed manner, as neither of them knew the other. The woman apologetically explained that she had come merely to accompany a friend and did not feel inclined to meet Baba. Baba kept signaling that she should come to him. At this, her attitude changed and she walked toward him. Baba's hand stretched out to her with obvious joy. He had found the needing soul that, for some obscure reason, was unconsciously due to meet him. Standing before Baba, her embarrassment almost grew into a state of confusion, which Baba took care of immediately in his benign way. At his words, "Do not worry, I know everything, and I will take care of you and help you," she involuntarily began sobbing. The reception continued as the rescued soul disappeared into the crowd. About a week later, before Narina drove to California with Elizabeth to meet Baba, she received a phone call from a woman she did not know. "I am the woman that you so graciously induced to meet the master," the woman related. "May I come and see you? Something so wonderful has happened to me." Narina learned the woman's name was Marion, and she was a friend of a friend. She made a date to meet her. Marion came to Narina's apartment and narrated the sorrowful state of affairs in her family due to the hatred between her and her daughter. "My daughter and I have persecuted each other in hatred for 20 years. I have never been able to understand why, as she was born in love. Neither was I able to overcome a physical disdain for my child. I had never even kissed her. When the master asked me to meet him, I did not know why he was calling me. My own unhappiness had become so much a part of my life that I did not even know I was in need of help. When the master greeted me with so much kindness, I did not remember being impressed in any way, not even to have been able to look at him closely. I was like one in a dream and woke up suddenly as if I had been carried off somewhere by an invisible friend for some good reason. I could not understand what had happened to me. The next morning, I woke from an unusually deep sleep and found myself bathed in an ecstasy of love and bliss. It was so powerfully active within me that it made me function without my will and without thinking. I walked straight into the room of my daughter, who was still sleeping, and, drawn by irresistible love, stretched myself near that despised child. For the first time in the lives of both of us, we felt a bond that was more than a mother and daughter's love. It was an experience almost superhuman. It sealed our hearts together, and a new life has begun for us. My experience was contagiously felt by her, and is today a tender relationship that reflects happiness for the whole family. Dear friend, who is this man? I remember similar stories about Jesus imparting such grace of love. Norina then told Marion a little about Meher Baba. On another occasion, a friend of Norina's, who was an acute alcoholic, came to meet Baba in New York. For years, the woman had been in and out of one asylum after another. She hated her mother, with whom she lived, and would greet her each morning with such cruel words. Why aren't you dead yet? Norina aroused her curiosity about Baba, and the friend finally agreed to see that man. When the woman was brought to Baba, Norina tried to tell him about her background. Baba cut her short, motioning, I know her very well. The woman sat at his feet, and after a few moments of friendly conversation, Baba mentioned alcoholic beverages and drinking with intense interest. They discussed different types of drinks, and Baba even remarked about a wine that he had heard was very good. The woman was overjoyed to talk about a subject so familiar to her. Her meeting was lighthearted, jovial, and full of humor. After a while, the woman turned to Norina and said, You know, your Baba is not as bad as I thought. He's a real human being. A week later, the woman invited Norina to tea. She opened the door to her apartment, and for once, Norina noticed that she had not been drinking. The woman immediately disclosed her determination to change her life. I do not drink anymore, nor will I ever do so again. I was a fool. I have wasted the better part of my life and energy. I cannot hate anyone either. I am sorry to have given so much suffering to my mother. I now love her and will devote my life to her happiness. No mention was made of Baba, but Norina knew that his glance had penetrated this woman's dark mind and had lifted it out of the clouds to a new and better life. On Monday, 23 May 1932, Baba and the Mandali were driven to the Harmon retreat, where he was received with heartfelt joy by Malcolm and Jean Schloss. Meanwhile, Quentin stayed in Manhattan to arrange the train tickets and other traveling details to California. He was also instructed to purchase a ticket to India for Ghani. Sometime before, Malcolm and Jean had been informed that Baba would be staying in Harmon with a few persons for a full year, and Jean had planned for his accommodations. But she was advised that, so long as she had no definite commitment from Baba, she should make no permanent arrangements. Instead of a year, Baba just stayed 2 days, thus giving his American lovers a practical exercise in maintaining their flexibility. In Harmon, a representative from the Paramount Film Company approached Baba with a request for a message to the world. Baba allowed himself to be filmed again as Malcolm read out part of the message given at the Stokeses. Baba then dictated on the board, "I give my love and blessing to the people of America." Soon after, the film was relayed by Paramount Newsreel throughout the world. About 20 people came to see Baba at Harmon, including Josephine Grabow, her mother, Mary Anton, Anita, Milo Shattuck, and Grace Mann. Oh, this is the footnote, right? The birth control advocate, Margaret Sanger, had been contacted by Malcolm and wrote an appreciation letter that she would very much like to meet Meher Baba, since she lived not far from Harmon and had missed him on his first visit. But it is not known whether she ever did. Archive letter 933. Okay. Bayram would perform on the sitar, and Josephine would dance each evening and compose heartrending poems for Baba. Howard H. Inches also came to Harmon for a few days. Inches was an actor who had appeared on Broadway. He recalled, "I was brought up and presented to this man with the large brown eyes and queer lambskin coat, a new prophet on the horizon of burning in America. I was captivated by the purity of the life of this temporary colony at Harmon, worshiping at the feet of Baba, and soon I was a regular member." Let's see, and we have another footnote. "Brother, Heal Thyself," Thomas Inches, Phoenix Press, 1938, page 44. Howard Inches became interested in vitamins, nutrition, and exercise, and later became a sort of fitness guru. He lectured and wrote several books on these topics. When you close out a footnote, do you hit the back arrow?
Just press close and then you'll get to the
Okay,
page.
there it goes. Okay. Let's see. Malcolm Schloss was also a poet who wrote in praise of Meher Baba. Another footnote. Malcolm Schloss wrote 3 books of poetry dedicated to Baba, titled The Infinite Glory, 1945, Processional of Joy, 1946, and Ways to Attain the Supreme Reality, 1952. The following poem, Song of the Master, captures the feeling of the transcendence of materialism, which is an aspect of Meher Baba's manifestation and mission to the world. I come to give what you cannot buy. If you cling to your comforts, pass me by. Mine is the way that the saints have trod, a timeless path to a spaceless God. I come to give what you cannot buy, the courage to live and the faith to die. to die while living and live while dead, to give up the world ere the breath has fled. I come to give that which cannot be bought, a love-born wisdom which transcends thought, a peace-born bliss which transmutes desire, a joy-born power which never will tire. While in Harmon, Baba kept Malcolm alongside him to read the alphabet board and help communicate during interviews with those who had come seeking advice. Privately, Baba had conveyed to Malcolm and Jean that they were his chief agents in America, in charge of his work there. Malcolm's close involvement was a great shock to Meredith, who could not bear to be excluded. Prior to and during this trip, Meredith had been trying to impress people that he was Baba's right-hand man and knew everything about the master, his ways and preferences. When the time came, Baba would bring one who had been raised to the heights crashing down, and Meredith's time has come. Baba had allowed him a loose rein in the beginning, but he now began tightening the leash, which cut deeply into Meredith's ego. Baba stopped pampering him, and after this trip, Meredith Starr was to leave Meher Baba forever.
Thank you, Eva.
You're
Ma-
welcome.
that is a long read. Marvin, would you like to take it from here? Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning, 24 May 1932, Elizabeth, Marina, and Anita arrived in Harmon to spend the day. After lunch, Baba led his lovers outside to the stone terrace. Some from the group went forward to pick a few wildflowers in bloom in the yard, but Elizabeth stayed close to Baba. Baba then stepped forward and motioned Elizabeth to follow. He bent down and picked a small pink flower, which he handed to her. Kaka was near Baba, ready with the board, and Baba motioned for it. Spelling the words out, he had Chanji tell Elizabeth, always keep this flower and write down today's date. Someday you will know the meaning of it. The following evening, Baba said something similar to Margaret Mayo. Before retiring to his room, he went down to the river alone or with one of the Mandali. When he returned, he told Margaret that she would one day understand what work he had done at her home. When Elizabeth returned home that night, she pasted the flower inside the cover of her New Testament and wrote, quote, Baba, May 24, 1932, in the mid, quote, end quote. In the mid 1950s, when she was unpacking a trunk, she happened to notice the book again and read the inscription next to the flower. Its significance was instantly apparent. Baba had given her the flower 20 years to the day prior to his automobile accident in Prague, Oklahoma, May 24th, 1952, in which Elizabeth had been driving. But that was far into the future age, mused. These days in the spring of 1932 were filled with ecstasy and bliss. The lovers' hearts were overflowing with the God-man's presence in their midst. Little did they know that the Avatar was destined to break his bones and shed his blood on American soil. At midnight on Wednesday, 25th May 1932, Mayor Baba left Harmon by train with Jean and Malcolm, Meredith and Margaret Starr, Kaka, Chanji, Adi Jr., and Behram. Ghani left to return to India via Europe. Quentin was on the Iroquois train already, having boarded in New York City. The group reached Chicago, Illinois, the next evening at 7:20 p.m. by route of Cleveland, Ohio. In Chicago, they had to change trains to the Golden State Limited, necessitating an hour's wait, during which time reporters surrounded Baba. Baba gave them a short message and was photographed. In New York, there had been at times as many as 48 reporters accompanied by cameramen near Baba during press conferences. Baba and the Mandali quickly drove around Chicago in taxis, along Lakeshore Drive and through the city, before reboarding the train and continuing their journey. At the photo session, Meredith and Malcolm both tried to be near Baba, which resulted in a quarrel. Baba then asked Quentin to stand next to him, which pierced Meredith's inflated ego even more. Missouri was the next stop. Baba was again met by reporters and photographed in Kansas City on 27 May 1932 at 9 a.m. The train halted for 40 minutes, and Baba accommodated the press by answering questions. He then strolled outside the station for about half an hour. An example of the kind of publicity Baba was receiving at this time can be observed in an article which appeared on the front page of the Kansas City Evening Star that night. Baba, to give up his a few more months and 7 year silence will end. He'll become a messiah in Hollywood, and then his fingers will get a rest. He who has transcended the world illusion and is of God and heaven walked in the flesh today at the Union Station under a depression suit worth probably $15 with an extra pair of pants, and smiled timidly under a mustache the size of Buffalo Bills and black as the ace of spades. Sri Sadguru Meher Baba, this holy one, perfect master and compassionate father, is on the way to Hollywood, California, to break a 7 year silence and thereby lead all men to happiness and peace. July 13th at 7 o'clock at night, Baba will cease pointing and snapping his fingers and grunting to reporters in response to questions. I'll just read the next sentence before all right, let's go there. The reporter of the Kansas City Star may have been exaggerating when he claimed Baba grunted or uttered Then he will break forth in full bloom of his messiahship, and through his speech transform the consciousness of the whole of humanity. Those were examples of the newspapers. Next sentence says, others do the talking. Baba slipped from his train drawing room today for a short walk in the brisk air. Followers, to the number of 9, occupying berths on the same Pullman, likewise piled out and volubly explained that one desired to know and more, and explained all that one desired to know and more about the Silent One. Quote, he is the tremendous radiation of divine love, end quote, said Mr. and Mrs. Meredith Starr. They are English disciples of Baba, the India-born Persian, whose father wandered in the jungles for years in search of the way and the truth, and finally was told by the divine voice to cease wandering and go back to civilization because his second son, the present Baba, was foreordained as the truth bearer. He will found no religion, no cult, no creed, Mr. Starr said. He is universal, like Jesus, Buddha, Zoroaster, and Krishna. None of them desired creeds, cults, or societies which divide people. What they taught applies to all people in all times, in all places. He makes them truth conscious. Baba will simply help people to practice the truth they already know. He will make them conscious of truth. Another English disciple and secretary to Baba, Quentin Todd, said of his boss, he is simply a perfect master who teaches people to practice the religions they already believe in, end quote. Long brown hair tumbled over Baba's frail and slightly bent shoulders. He wore a no man's collar. A thick brown scarf was tied instead under his chin. His suit was brown. His shoes were of dull brown suede. He was a study in brown, a silent study. Snap went his fingers, the signal for changing the subject of conversation. Two of Baba's brothers, not chosen by God, but ordinary Persian young men in American ready-made suits, were with him on the train and seemed to be enjoying the trip. Had the Baba a cure for the economic disturbance, since he would lead the world to peace and happiness? How could he solve the problems of unemployment, capitalism, communism, prohibition? He has a method. Mr. and Mrs. Malcolm Schloss of Harmon, New York, also disciples en route to Hollywood, answered earnestly. All such social problems spring from self-interest. Self-interest is based on imperfect knowledge of the true nature of the self, which is an eternal reality, infinite in power and resources. Then all our social problems shall be solved from the inside out, not the outside in. When you realize your identity with the whole of life, that your powers are infinite instead of finite, you will have no fear, no greed, no reason for conflict with anything or anybody in life. And the attitude of men will be one of cooperation instead of competition. Man will give what they have instead of receive. Everybody's interest shall be as vital to you as your own, because we are all one great universal self, a part of God. Mr. Schloss further defined Baba as an avatar, a part of God incarnate on earth. Baba is 38 years old, not married, a stranger to sex experience. He has not sat contemplating his navel for years, as have many Indian mystics, but believes in long fasts and silences. He speaks English well and Persian and 4 Indian languages. He is today's Messiah, of the line of Jesus, Buddha, Zoroaster, and Krishna, Mr. Schloss concluded. Besides imparting the highest state of spirituality to a select few, he will give a general spiritual push to the whole world. He is of God. The train was about to leave. Sri Baba shrugged his shoulders, pointed to the engine, and went aboard his car. These were all from newspaper articles, and we have more. The heading to the photograph accompanying the article read, Baba, the Persian Messiah, Hollywood bound. The caption read, Sri Sadguru Meher Baba, who claims to be of God in the sense Jesus, Buddha, Zoroaster, Krishna, and other mystics claimed and taught, was in Kansas City today on the way to Hollywood, where, July 13th, he will break an alleged 7-year silence in order to drop words that shall restore peace and happiness to the world. 9 disciples traveled with Baba.
Thank you, Marvin. Uh, let's see. Mahu, would you like to read? Okay.
Should I read?
Yes, please, Mahu.
Oh,
From
sorry, I didn't have. So page 1425 in year 1932. The train arrived in El Paso, Texas the next day at 8:45 in the morning, and Bobo got down at the station. He had a 20 minutes walk before proceeding to Tucson, Arizona, which was reached at 5:20 that evening. And we're seeing the map of America in 1932. Yeah, pretty much the
that, just
same.
describe the map in your own words from LA to, all the points. And if you like, others just continue reading.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue. I'm just letting the listener know. Reaching Los Angeles at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday, 1932, Baba went to stay at the home of Priscilla and Mark Edmund Jones at 2400 North Gower Street in Hollywood. Jones, 43, was a former screenwriter and a noted astrologist who founded the Sabian Assembly, a spiritual study group, Sabian. He and his wife were sincere seekers. Jones had become friends with Malcolm Schloss when he taught astrology in New York City in the 1920s. Malcolm had invited Jones to meet Baba in Harmon the previous year, but Jones had been unable to make the trip and instead invited Baba to be his house guest if Baba were ever in California. Baba accepted the invitation. Prior to Baba's arrival, Jones wrote to Baba, "We gladly seek to serve you during your stay, not in serving a man of flesh and blood, but in contributing to an inflow of peace and power in a world sadly torn for lack of a genuine activation. We hope that you will bring a blessing to our genuine efforts for the great ideal, and that we will be able to carry on with a spiritual power and a physical potency which would not have been possible but for your coming. And we hope that it may be our privilege to follow your introduction to Southern California, so that we may be of real and appreciable spiritual aid to you in the beautiful task and mission which we feel to be yours. We regard your coming as significant, and for it we are preparing with devotion and zealous anticipation." Very beautiful. When he arrived, Baba told them, quote, "When illumination becomes clear, you won't find fault with anyone. The time is near when America will have to accept spirituality." In quote. Chanji, Quentin, and Meredith stayed with Baba at the Joneses' home. Kaka, Adi Sr., and Behram stayed at the nearby apartment of one of the Joneses' students, Jean, Malcolm, Margaret Starr, and the others invited by Baba stayed at the Mission Hotel. Baba remained in Hollywood for 7 hectic days, each packed full of interviews and receptions. Norina and Elizabeth had driven all the way from New York to help in arranging Baba's schedule. Page 1426. The newspapers had anticipated his arrival, and at a press conference held at 1 p.m. on the day he arrived, Baba gave the following message. So much has been said and written about the highest consciousness and God realization that people are bewildered as to the right process and immediate possibility of attainment. The philosophical mind, wading laboriously through such literature, only ends up learning a few intellectual gymnastics. The highest state of consciousness is latent in all. The Son of God is in every man, but requires to be manifested. The method of attaining his great consciousness must be very practical and adapted to the existing mental and material conditions of the world. The rituals and ceremonies instituted by the priest-ridden churches have made the process of attainment too dry and that accounts for the lack of interest felt all over the world toward religious things in general. India, in spite of its high state of spirituality, at the present moment is very caste-ridden because of the enforcement by various cults of the plethora of rituals and ceremonies, which maintain the form but kill the spirit. Forms and ceremonies, excuse me, form and ceremonies, instead of diminishing the ego, strengthening it, strengthen it. The stronger the ego, the more aggressive it becomes. In the anxiety to become conscious of a separate self through thinking thoughts such as, I am in the right, I am the favored one, I only have the right to leave, one becomes distracted. The furious race for armaments of the Christian world, evincing an utter disregard for the commandment of Jesus, that if one cheek is smitten, the other should be offered, shows clearly what I mean by the ego. In the evolutionary ascent from the mineral, vegetable, and animal life, the latent mind gradually expands and develops till full consciousness is reached in the human form. To create this very consciousness, the universe emanated from the infinite ocean of knowledge and bliss, namely God, the Absolute. In the human form, however, with the mind fully developed, a difficulty is confronted to remove which prophets and spiritual masters have periodically visited this earthly plane, visited this earthly plane, sorry. Besides full consciousness in the human form as a result of previous conditions of life, the ego, the I, is evolved. The ego is composed of fulfilled and unfulfilled desires and creates the illusion of feeling finite, weak, and unhappy. Henceforth, the soul can only progress through the general suppression of this finite ego and its transformation into the divine ego, the one infinite self, but retaining in full the consciousness of its human form.
Thank you, Mahu. Ralph, would you like to read next? Okay. Okay. Jay, would you like to read next? Okay, I guess I'll go next. When man realizes the state of divine consciousness, he finds himself in everyone and sees all phenomena as forms of his own real self. The best and also the easiest process of overcoming the ego and attaining the divine consciousness is to develop love and render selfless service to humanity in whatever circumstances we are placed. All ethics and religious practices ultimately lead to this. The more we live for others and less for ourselves, the more the lower desires are eliminated, and this in turn reacts upon the ego, suppressing and transforming it proportionately. The ego persists to the last, not until all the six out of seven principal states on the path are traversed. Culminating in one God consciousness state is the ego completely eliminated to to reappear on the seventh plane as the divine I, the state of Christ consciousness, to which Jesus referred when he said, I and my Father are one, and which corresponds to the state of living in the infinite and finite at one and the same time. The above is normal procedure for one who works on his own initiative without having come across a living master. With the help of a perfect master, the whole affair, however, is greatly simplified. Complete surrender to the living will of the perfect one and unflinching readiness to carry out his orders rapidly achieves a result not possible even by rigidly practicing all the ethics of the world for 1,000 years. The extraordinary results achieved by a perfect master are due to the fact that by being one with the universal mind, he is present in the mind of every human being and can therefore give just the particular help needed to awaken the highest consciousness latent in every individual. Perfection, however, in order to achieve the greatest result on the material plane, must possess a human touch and a keen sense of humor. I eternally enjoy the Christ state of consciousness, and when I speak, which I intend doing in the near future, I shall manifest my true self. Besides giving a spiritual push to the whole world, I shall lead all those who come to me towards light and truth. In short, is my mission to the world. At 7 p.m., about 200 seekers were invited to meet Baba. Visitors were introduced individually in batches of 50. Baba looked resplendent in a white suit as he shook each one's hand. Baba then went to his room and the visitors were served tea and refreshments while Adi Jr. and Behram entertained them with Indian music. The procedure was repeated 4 times for each of the batches. Before going to bed the first night, Baba related to Quentin, I'm not happy here. Outwardly, Baba was restless and ill at ease. Adding to his discomfort, Meredith insisted that he be allowed to sleep in Baba's room. Baba allowed him to do this for 2 nights, although he did not like it. Quentin Todd, being an accomplished actor, was influential in arranging many of Baba's contacts in Hollywood. The following is a synopsis of Meher Baba's 1 week visit to Hollywood in 1932. Footnote, please. The interviews and receptions were held at John S.'s house, unless otherwise noted. Sunday, 29th, 8:30 a.m. Arrive Alhambra Drive to Hollywood, 1 p.m. Reception for the press and news services. 7 p.m. Reception for leaders of local groups. Monday, 30th May, 9:30 a.m. Private interviews until noon. 2 p.m. Reception for Sabian Assembly students of Mark Edmund Jones. Evening visit to Dr. Farid's house. Tuesday, 31st May, 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. Private interviews. 11 a.m. Visit to Paramount Studios. 2 p.m. Visit to 20th Century Fox and Universal Film Studios. 3:30 p.m. Reception for local ministers and religious heads and a few private interviews. 8:30 p.m. Public reception at the Knickerbocker Hotel. Wednesday, June 1st, 9:30 a.m. Private interviews until noon. 2 p.m. Visit to Metro Goldwyn Mayer Film Studios, the MGM Studios. Wow, Baba really did it all. 3:30 p.m. Reception to faculty of Occidental College, where Jonas's was enrolled. 8:30 p.m. Private reception at Pickfair in Beverly Hills. Thursday, June 2nd, 9:30 a.m. Private interviews until noon. 2 p.m. Private interviews until 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Drive to Santa Monica. Evening dinner at Talula Bankhead's house. 8 p.m. Visit to Grauman's Chinese Theater. Friday, June 3rd, daytime interviews. At night, drive through Los Angeles. Saturday, June 4th, daytime lunch with Marie Dressler. Leave Hollywood on board the Monterey. Papa was so busy during his brief Hollywood stay that the Mandali with him rarely had more than 4 hours of sleep at night. On May 1932, Baba took a drive to see the surrounding countryside and was particularly anxious to go to Beverly Hills to make contact with those prominent in the film industry. The first person to meet was a friend of Quentine's named May Betty, a New Zealand actress who came to see him that evening. Baba was interviewed later that same day by LA Times and was asked, "What do you hope to accomplish in the United States?" Baba answered, "A general awakening which will affect the whole of mankind and will eliminate depression and dissatisfaction existing in the world today." The next day, Baba visited Paramount Studios accompanied by Quentin and the Mandali. Lal Chand Mehra, an Indian born actor who was a friend of the Jonases, also went with him. Footnote Lord Meher, page 1429. Lal Chand Mehra's career began with Cecil B. DeMille's The King of Kings 1927, a biopic of Jesus Christ made during the silent era. The movie depicts Christ's many miracles, including the reforming of Mary Magdalene. Mehra played a key role in the Hindustani subtitling of the film and was also one of the extras in the first of several uncredited roles. Thank you. Baba, sorry, one on the lot, on one lot, The Devil and the Deep was being filmed. Quentin had known the American actress Tallulah Bankhead and the actor Charles Lofton in London when they worked in the theatre, and he introduced them to Baba. They in turn introduced Baba to another actor, Gary Cooper. Footnote, please. Tallulah Bankhead's flamboyant personality, wit, and feisty roles in the films made her a legend in the movie industry. She was born on 31st January 1902. Baba stayed to watch a couple of scenes being filmed and afterward was photographed with Tallulah. The visit lasted almost 2 hours. According to a newspaper account, which may not be accurate, Baba spelled on the boat to Tallulah that one of the reasons he had come was that in Hollywood there was an equal balance between the spiritual and material forces. Footnote, please. New York Times, June 1932, page X3. After lunch, Baba and a few others went to Fox and Universal Studios. At Universal, where Baba stayed for half an hour, he met the cowboy actor Tom Mix, who was photographed with Baba and an Indian born director named Isra Mir. Footnote, please. Another actor, Bruce Evans, also had his picture taken with Baba, but these photographs are untraceable. Ezra Mayer, née Edwin Mayers, 1900 to 1993, was born in a reputed Jewish family of Calcutta. He went to Hollywood and gained experience in different facets of film production. On his return to India, he was appointed the chief producer of Films Division, where he directed, produced more than 300 documentaries. He is considered the doyen of documentary film production in India. Okay, I would request another reader to join us from here. Eva, would you
Sure,
like to? Thank you, darling.
sure. Are we at the night, that night at 8:30 p.m.?
We are just after the footnote. Quentin
Oh,
returned.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Quentin returned to Paramount Studios to pick up Tallulah Bankhead, 30, who had an interview with Baba at 5:30 p.m. She had a long talk with Baba and said she was on her way to see the actress Greta Garbo and would tell her of him. That night at 8:30 p.m., a large reception of 1,000 people took place at the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood. Many from Los Angeles and the surrounding area came to the love gathering. There were so many people that the hall had to be cleared of all furniture. Men, women, and children stood in line, waiting to meet Baba. In a theatrical setting, Baba was seated on an elevated seat with the 4 Eastern mandali on one side and 6 Westerners on the other, forming a semicircle. Behind Baba, like 2 angels, 2 harpists played softly. Visitors were admitted one at a time through a side door of the hall. Each was introduced to Baba, receiving a handshake and his radiant smile. Passing in a circle through another side door, they were then led outside to the lounge where refreshments were served. In the dazzling lights of the hall, Baba looked divinely beautiful in his white robe and with his hair falling to his shoulders, a figure that captivated the hearts of all. Baba's instructions were that visitors were not to ask questions and should leave after a handshake with him. Excuse me. But there were many who were so enthralled, who felt so intoxicated, they would not leave. Their words of wonder echoed throughout the room. If Christ were alive today, he would look like him. What a divine glow on his face. He does not seem to belong to this world. Can any man be as beautiful? He is the living Christ. How marvelous is his divine attraction. I feel like looking at him forever. My eyes are dazzled by his beauty. I just cannot leave. For the first time in my life, I have seen divinity. What a sweet face. How holy is his divine purity. Nothing can be said about him. My tongue is stuck. How electrifying was his touch. I felt a shock pass through me. My God, I was senseless. What is happening to my heart? Oh, how wonderful is his form. What brilliance, what beauty, what a smile. I am amazed. It took 2 hours for Baba to shake each person's hand. The following message was then read out. Since arriving in America, I have been asked many times what solution I have brought for the social problems now confronting you. What did I have to offer that would solve the problems of unemployment, prohibition, and crime, that would eliminate the strife between individuals and nations and pour a healing balm of peace upon a troubled world? The answer has been so simple that it has been difficult to grasp. The root of all our difficulties, individual and social, is self-interest. It is self-interest, for example, which causes corruptible politicians to accept bribes and betray the interests of those whom they have been elected to serve, which causes bootleggers for their own profit to break a law designed, whether wisely or not, to help the nation as a whole, which causes people to connive for their own pleasure in the breaking of that law, thus causing disrespect for law in general and increasing crime tremendously, which causes the exploitation of the great masses of humanity by individuals or groups of individuals seeking personal gain. It is self-interest which impedes the progress of civilization by shelving inventions which would contribute to the welfare of humanity at large, simply because their use would mean the scraping of present inferior equipment, which, when people are starving, causes the wanton destruction of large quantities of food, simply in order to maintain the market prices, which causes the hoarding of large sums of gold when the welfare of the world demands its circulation.
Thank you, Eva.
You're
So
welcome.
we end it here today on page number 1431, and we'll start from 1432 next week. And we have Christmas coming up, so I wish everybody a very happy Merry Christmas and enjoy Mera's birthday today. And yeah, yeah, I'm going to just stop the recording and we can chat.